call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Oumar Sy takes on Alonzo Menifield this Saturday at UFC Fight Night Atlanta. And this is a good fight, you know. Oumar Sy, undefeated fighter, 11-0. He's got 2 fights, I believe, in the UFC now, coming off of a win over Dawoon Jung by decision, and before that, got the rear naked choke over Tuco Tokos in his UFC debut. So taking a pretty big step up in competition here against Alonzo Menifield. So I'm excited to see how this one plays out. But Oumar Sy, you know, pretty big dude for the division, 6'4" with an 83-inch reach. I think that's like 2 inches under John Jones's reach, who I think has, you know, one of the biggest reaches in the UFC. So 29, not even in his prime yet. And you'd look at this guy and you'd see his athleticism, his frame, you'd think he was a striker, but he's more of a grappler, more of a wrestler type. He does have KOs on his record, but the majority of his wins are by rear naked choke, unanimous decision, punches from mount, things like that. So looking to get the fight to the ground and not stand on the feet against Alonzo Menifield, who has tons of UFC experience, tons of knockout power. He's fought the who's who of the UFC's 205-pound division, but he's getting up there in age. He's 37 years old. He'll be 38 in October. He's 6 foot with a 76-inch reach, so gonna have a 7-inch reach disadvantage in this one, which could be substantial, you know, as long as it's on the feet. But I think Oumar Sy is gonna be looking to get this fight to the ground as soon as possible. But Alonzo Menifield trains out of Fortis MMA in Texas. Crazy power, decent submissions that we've seen. Has a submission over Jimmy Crute back in the day. Had a couple really good fights with him. Von Flue choke, things like that. But a lot of his fights are won by decision or knockout. Kind of chinny at times. We've seen him get knocked out in 2 of his last 3 fights to Carlos Olberg and Azamat Murzakanov, which is no shame in those losses. I think those guys are, you know, top 5 criteria. I think those guys are top 5 material in the UFC's 205-pound division. Has a win over Dustin Jacoby, which is really impressive. Was able to knock him down a few times en route to getting that decision win. Had 2 really good fights with Jimmy Crute, where he was kind of beating him up to get a decision, and got a guillotine choke on him in their last one. Knocked out Misha Serkinov. Got a win over Askar Mazarov. Lost to William Knight, which isn't the best look. Lost to Owen St. Preux, Devin Clark. So he's very 50-50. You know, sometimes he looks like just an absolute juggernaut who can take your head off, and other times he doesn't have very good performances. And speaking of not very good performances, he's coming off of a split decision loss to Julius Walker, where I think he just looked awful. I think that fight got fight of the night somehow, but it was just, those guys just looked very unpolished. It just looked very sloppy, and it looked like Alonzo Menifield was kind of slowing down, so to speak, and just not looking like the powerful kind of striker that we've seen in the past. So coming off of that performance, two KO losses back to back. Before that, I don't see him getting chinned in this one by Oumar Sy, but it's hard to pick him after his last performance against Julius Walker, taking the fight on short notice, making his UFC debut. Alonzo Menifield in his prime, I think, wipes the floor with Julius Walker. So I'm going to go with Oumar Sy in this one. Like I said, primarily a grappler, but he's going to be the much bigger fighter. Much younger, obviously. Going to be 8 years younger, I think it is. Already has a little bit of UFC experience in there, but I just trust him with his athleticism, his wrestling abilities. I think he'll be able to overwhelm Alonzo Menifield at this point in his career. You know, Alonzo Menifield, known as a big, strong striker, has decent takedown defense. I think the stats were showing like 70% or so, but he was taken down 6 times by Jimmy Crute and was taken down by Julius Walker in his last fight. And so I just think Oumar Sy is going to be able to, you know, stay safe on the feet, set up his takedowns with his strikes, and eventually get Alonzo to the ground to control him, win rounds, land some damage, or eventually get the sub. But it's just hard for me to pick Alonzo Menifield. I mean, he's got tons of experience, but he's also taken a lot of damage. Hasn't looked the best as of late, been very 50-50 and unreliable against really top-tier competition, and I think that's what Oumar Sy is. I think he's a really good prospect at 205 pounds. Like I said, big for the division, athletic, tons of momentum, yet to lose in his pro career. He's a finisher, really good gas tank, And I think this is a really bad matchup for Alonzo Menifield, just how he's looked as of late. And I think Oumar Sy gets this one, though.